Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf and to my second tops and flops of the year. As you could see from the intro, this one is the month April, May, and June. If you follow my channel, you know that I started with the tops and flops monthly, but that just didn't work for me anymore, mainly because I didn't read enough bad books, so I didn't have in every month, so I didn't have the flops for each month. So I decided to do it 3 monthly in the hope that at least within 3 months I would read some bad books. And I did between April and June. The categories are still the same. We start with the tops, and in the tops, the first category is the book that surprised me the most. And for this one, I chose translated fiction, Solveig Ballet, on the calculation of volume, translated by Barbara Haveland, first published in 2020. This is the first, obviously, it says somewhere. No, it doesn't. It doesn't even here. Yeah. So, oh yes, here. Very subtle. This is the first part of a multi-volume book with the same premise. And the premise was the reason that the book surprised me, because I didn't want to pick it up until Adam from Memento Mori told me that he really loved it, because it's a Groundhog Day premise. And I'm just not wild about that. So somebody who experiences the same day over and over again. I thought the movie was funny, but yeah, for some reason, I thought, well, I don't know, can you really make an interesting book based on this premise? But yes, Solveig Ballet could. So that's the reason I picked this book for the first category of surprise. So we have Tara, who is a antiques book dealer, old books, rare books, living with her husband Thomas. And she, when the book opens, has for the 121st time experienced the same day, the 18th of October. On that particular day, she was traveling to go to book fair and to buy new books for their shop. So her husband is alone in the house on this 18th of November. I'm mentioning this because it's important for the development of the story. And then what Solveig Ballet did is Tara is trying to find a way to cope with that. So, for instance, should she then go home? Her husband thinks she is in Paris or whatever. Should she go home and just surprise her husband, and then on the next day, she will wake up in the hotel room, obviously, where she spent the night on the 18th of November, and go back home and experience his surprise over and over again. In the end, for a time, she decides to secretly live in the house, so some upstairs guest bedroom that is never used. But her life goes on. So it's not that she is static, but she has no connection with the quote-unquote real world. So she gets older, whereas she still experiences for other people, it's always her on that same day. And I think the author really did a couple of interesting explorations of time and how you can connect with people if they experience the world in a completely different way than you do. And she also decided to, for instance, have some unexplained, but I mean, the whole thing is unexplained, so I didn't mind. She had some unexplained variations. So, for instance, if Tara goes and buys a book and takes it home with her and puts it next to her, sometimes this book will stay. Other times it will vanish because on the morning of the 18th, she hasn't bought the book yet. Yeah, so I haven't read the second part yet, but I'm definitely I want to continue, and it was a real, in the best sense of the word, a real surprise for me. The second category in the tops is always the book I thought about the most, and that was coincidentally a buddy read with Adam, Trieste by Dasha Drindic, translated by Ellen Elias Burzac. The book was first published in 2007. And I think it was her last book because she died around that time, unfortunately, way too young. She was in her early 60s or something like that. The author, I mean. So this book is set in Italy, hence Trieste, during the Holocaust. We follow, and World War II, we follow a main character, Haya, and she is born in 1923. So she is, when the war starts, what is it, 39. So she is a young woman, a girl, when the war starts. And then we follow her family and her life in Mussolini, Italy, during World War II. She meets a young SS officer who is a real life figure. Haya is an invented figure, and she gets a child, gets pregnant, gets a child. Oh, and I should say she's Jewish, and the child is abducted. And the frame of the book is set in 2006. Yes, Monday, 3rd of July, 2006. And it opens with the sentence, for 62 years, she has been waiting to be reunited with her son, who is now in his, obviously, 60s. The book is a combination of this story, this fictionalized story, but also a lot of almost essay-like parts where Drindic, she must have done an immense amount of research, talks about the other side, so to speak, the perpetrators, the SS officers, what happened in the war, but also mainly concentrating on what happened to the Jews. So she talks about the law. She has pages and pages of names of Jewish Italian who have been murdered. She has transcripts of court hearings after the war for some of the war criminals who were indeed put on trial. So it's a combination of this family, focusing on Haya, and the broader context of World War II and the Holocaust. And it really made me think, that was also the discussion that Adam and I had, is in 2007, when the book was published, how can you still make a book, a fiction novel about the Holocaust? Yeah, that sounds horrible, but interesting in the sense that there were so many books published, there was so much nonfiction published about this time. How can you actually give the reader kind of a new perspective on this? And in my view, Drindic succeeds in this by combining these two elements, the fiction and the nonfiction element, making it clear that the vastness and the immenseness of the crimes committed, but also focusing on one family, making it equally clear that numbers don't really mean anything. Each of those people, whether you talk about the Italians, thousands or millions, each of them was a human being and had a life and a family and, did like, I don't know, strawberry jam or not. So this combination for me really touched me. And that's why this is one of the books in the last 3 months that I definitely thought about a lot. And finally, in the category tops is the best nonfiction book. And that is always quite difficult because I read a lot of nonfiction. Almost half, 40% of what I read is nonfiction. And there are always lots of good books. So I think this was special for me. And this is Arundhati Roy's essay collection Azadi, which means freedom. And it's set around, most of the essays were written around 2020, so it's also about the COVID epidemic. I learned a really great deal when reading this book. Most of it deals with Indian politics, the government, and how they deal with the epidemic, but much broader than that. So it's not like 10 essays about, it's 13 essays, I think, 16 essays. And maybe 2 or 3 of them are actually on the COVID epidemic. But the perspective on Indian politics, and I said when I reviewed this book, I know very shamefully little about India. And this really helped me. I had to Google a lot because I didn't know the names or certain events that were referenced. But it's worth it because Arundhati Roy has such a brilliant mind and is able to talk about politics in a way that is engaging. And she is also, in your face. She calls people fascists if she believes they are fascists. So she's not sugarcoating stuff or being nice, like I want to appeal to the mainstream. No, she is a tough, brilliant woman, and I can highly, highly recommend these essays if you want to learn something about India in particular. So these were the 3 tops, and then on to the flops. And if you follow my channel, you will not be surprised by the flops. The first one was a book that I picked for Belgium for my project Reading Europe, where I try to read at least one book from each European country. I have the Dutch, the Flemish version, but it's translated into English. The Melting by Lise Spit. This was a debut novel published in 2016, and the English translation is by Kristen Gehrman. But like I said, had smelled The Melting. I read it in the original language. It's quite a chunky book, and it is about a young woman whose name escapes me, Ava, and she returns to her a little village in Belgium where she was born 13 years later or something. 13 years later. She's now in her mid to late 20s, and in that summer when she was 13, something horrible happened with her, to her, with other people, and I just don't enjoy, or enjoy is not the right word, but I don't appreciate this type of story where I feel the violence and the constant horror is kind of gratuitous, and she didn't need 600 whatever pages, 500 pages to do that, and it's just not interesting. And I don't like this type of book. I didn't like Jana Gahari's A Little Life. That is also the type of misery porn that I just don't. It doesn't do anything. I'm just getting annoyed. It irks me. So I decided to take this book off the list for the Reading Europe take another book for Belgium. I read after a third or so, I skim read it, just to have an idea whether the book actually goes where I think it would go, and it did. So it was also very predictable, which I never appreciate when I read a novel, except for romance, when they will get each other in the end. But that's not what I mean. But I knew from the first 10 pages what happened that summer, not in detail, but like the broad topic of it. And yeah, it just didn't work for me at all. So this was definitely one of the flops. And the other one was in a similar vein, because it was also about abuse and sexual abuse and violence towards women. And that was a book I picked for the 1001 Women Challenge, the other big project where I read 1001 women authors that before I die think I have to read. And that was Anais Nin, Delta of Venus. I buddy read this with Terri, from Miss Terri B, if that is her channel name. She has various names on social media, but I will leave a link down below. And we both just hated it and DNF'd it. And I, again, skim read it. It's short stories, and Anais Nin is definitely a famous author. She was born... I can't remember when she was born, but it's in the beginning of the 20th century. And this was published in 1977. Like I said, a collection of stories, and it's supposed to be erotica. Now, I have to admit, not a big erotica reader, me. No. It's just something also that I don't gravitate towards. It doesn't interest me. I'm not, for moral reasons, not interested, but it's just not something that I'm interested in. But anyway, this book is very famous. Anais Nin is very famous. She had this triangular relationship with Henry Miller and his wife. But this is not erotica. All stories that I read and the ones that I skim read are about abuse, incest, rape, sexual violence. No, I don't need to read about this, and certainly not in the sense of this is exhilarating or this is sexually exciting. No, it isn't. It's just violence, and it's yuck. So yeah, this was definitely one of the low points in these 3 months. I did decide to keep the book on the list. Normally, if I really hate a book or if I think it's really bad, I toss it off the 1001 list because I make the list myself. But I kind of thought it was good in a way to have this book on the list so that I remember how bad I felt this book was and how much it was not erotica, but just violence against women and children. So yeah. Anyway, these were my tops and flops of the months April, May, and June. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, I'm looking forward to your comments, and I will see you all soon in the next one, next Sunday.